Hey you guys, so today I will be filming a mid-year reading check-in video. There's about like 15 or 16 questions to get to today and I cannot wait. The first question I am going to go over today is just how is your reading going in general? Like, how are you feeling? And to be quite honest, I'm feeling really, really good. I was a little nervous when I started the reading year because last year was just down in the dumps when it comes to reading. Like, I was not reading a lot. I was kind of hating what I was reading, but I was also like going out of my comfort zone a lot. But I almost think maybe I was like going out of my comfort zone in any which way. And even if I wasn't like enjoying what I was reading, I was just like pushing myself to like change it up because I was like hating reading so much. Not necessarily like reading in general or like the act of reading, but just like so many of my books I was picking up. I was like, I'm over this. I'm over this sad millennial woman. I am over just so many like, I feel like really popular tropes at the time. It's like once you've read so many, you've read them all at that point, you know what I'm saying? And I just feel like I was like really over it. And so I like needed to change it up. But I don't know if last year I was changing it up in ways that were enjoyable to me. But I feel like this year I have been. And I think part of my positivity towards reading this year has honestly been the 2 book clubs I joined. So I joined a book club at the brewery up the street. I went to that first meeting in it's either January or February. So I showed up to my first meeting. I wasn't the biggest fan of the first book that I read for the book club. It was like Wild and Wicked Things. I don't even know who it's by. It was some like fantasy, romance, historical fiction. Like it was just like very, very much so like not a Kate book. And so I was kind of nervous. I was like, oh my God, if they like keep picking books like this, like I don't think this is going to be it for me, but I do want to join book club. So like kind of like I don't really know what to do. But I show up and I learn next month's pick and it was In the Woods by Tanner French. And I was like, okay, I can handle that. And I just felt like with every month, even if I didn't like enjoy the book, I feel like the options we get to vote from, so every month we vote between 3 books for 2 months ahead, I just feel like I had a lot of confidence. I was like, all the book options are pretty good, even if the one that was picked wasn't necessarily like my top choice. It just made me feel like, okay, like I can read bad books or books that I don't really want to read like every few months, you know what I mean? As long as like most of them are at least something I can like get through and not hate my life. And so I just feel like joining that book club in particular has really just got me out of my comfort zone in the best way ever. So yes, I am feeling really, really good about my reading this year. I told you I joined 2 book clubs. The other book club is at a coffee shop up the street. That one was fun to join because I got to start from their very first meeting. I would say overall, my reading this year has just been very, very good. And very, very fun. I haven't had too many 5-star reads, but I don't even really care. Like, it's just been like fun reading this year. I just feel like I've had a good time sitting down with a book for like hours on end and just like reading. And I haven't felt that in a really long time. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. At the halfway mark this year, I had read 31 books and I was 4 books behind my being on track to hit my goal or whatever, and I was kind of stressed, you know. I feel like most of this year I was like 5 to 6 books behind the like you're on track goal thing, and I was kind of stressed. But I'm feeling a little better. I'm feeling a little better about it. I don't know why. I'm just like in the reading mood lately, and so I'm like, I can do it, you know. When it comes to page number, 3% of my books have been 500 or more pages, and then 58% is 300 to 499, and then only 39% is less than 300 pages, which like I said, in the last like couple years, I would say the less than 300 page books have been more what I've been gravitating towards. And I really think it's because a lot of people I follow online, that's like what they read. And so then of course I feel like I get interested in what my favorite readers are reading, so then I'm going to pick up their reading. But like I said, I just feel like book club has like got me a little less afraid to read like a larger book every month, you know? Like, yes, focus on your reading goal quantity, but also like don't necessarily stop yourself from reading what you would want to read just because of the page number. I have read 26% nonfiction and then 74% fiction. I feel like that tracks with my reading of the last few years. I feel like 25% is usually nonfiction, the rest fiction, and I feel pretty good about that. When it comes to most genres, contemporary and then literary, those are pretty much what it's been for the last few years, so not shocking. Then though, romance. And I was like, oh, for real? For real? I was kind of shocked by that, but it's been fun. Like I don't know. I feel like in the last few videos I've talked about how I've kind of come back to loving romance most of the time. And it's just been fun to like read them every now and again to give myself a mental break. For reading to just be silly and fun and happy again. So yeah, I'm kind of like happy that the number's so high. The next two are LGBTQIA+, which I wasn't shocked by. I feel like I've read a lot of queer books this year. On purpose, I don't know. I just feel like it's like what I've been drawn to lately. And then mystery. So, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with book clubs. I feel like I've read a lot of mysteries for book clubs this year. And my average rating so far this year is a 3.81 star. Honestly, that's pretty high. I feel pretty good about that. So yeah, I would say overall I'm having a really good reading year and I'm feeling really good about it. The second question is the best book that you've read so far this year. And I was torn between Beautyland by Marie Helen Bertino and then Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. So Beautyland was just like so fun and sad and hit me at like the best time. I feel like I was just like really depressed this winter. Like it was just like not for me. I don't know. It like rained every day of February and I was literally just so not. I was unwell. Like that's all I have to say. Like I was unwell in the gray weather. I couldn't with the rain and the gray anymore. And I feel like reading a book that was so existential. So like our main character is this alien who comes to Earth and then learns to basically like be a human, but then is like talking to her like alien family in space. And she's just relaying like different feelings and societal norms and stuff like back to her alien family. So you're basically watching this girl who's an alien, but like this little girl like grow up and like learn what it's like to have to be alive and like be alive for such a long time, and just all the like thoughts and feelings that come with all those just like existential, like I don't know, I just feel like everyone hits a certain age in life where everything becomes very existential. Like, why am I here? What's the point of this? What are we all doing every day? Like, and it can be very overwhelming for some people. And I feel like that's kind of where I was like this winter. I just feel like it hit me like really hard again. Definitely not the first time, but I don't know what was going on. But anyway, so I feel like it was really fun to read from that perspective. It was very different than anything I've really ever read before, and I highly, highly recommend. But like I said, it is a little depressing and a little existential. So if that's like not the mindset you're in, I definitely would just skip that one. Then the next one I'm going to talk about is Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I feel like everyone and their mother has read this one, and I freaking loved it. I had it on my TBR for a moment now, but it was a book club pick, so it just kind of forced me to finally get to it. I think it was my second Ann Patchett that I've ever read, and I absolutely loved it. So it's set during COVID, and we're following this family of three sisters, a mother and a dad living on a cherry orchard in Michigan, I believe. They all come home during the pandemic, and to pass the time, they're working on their farm, and they beg and beg and beg for their mother to tell them about some of her previous like love stories and whatever while she was like a little actress in this summer play. And it was just so sweet and fun. And I can't lie, like I personally liked reading about the pandemic in terms of like family and how we were all spending our time, or how some of us were spending our time during the pandemic. And I love like the family aspect of it. I feel like I normally always love a family centered book, but I feel like I can really relate to the way they spent their pandemic, like being in a house. So like I was at home with my parents, my brother, his girlfriend, my parents, our family dog, and then I grew up next to my aunt, uncle, cousins, and then the house next to that, my grandparents. So I just feel like a lot of my pandemic was spent at work because I was an essential worker, and then at home just spending time with my family. I know it's very like privileged that they got to spend their pandemic the way that they did in the book, but if I'm being honest, I don't think that was like the most unrealistic thing for that time. But anyway, yeah, I love Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. The third question or prompt or whatever is the best sequel that you've read this year, and I'm going to have to give it to Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is the fourth book, I believe, in the Chestnut Springs series, but is my last in the series. So sad that it's over. It was just so good. It was so fun. They're all like cowboy rodeo romances, and I lived for all of them. But this one specifically, I loved that our two main characters, Winter and Theo, I think, were like grown-ass adults. They're grown-ups and they're mature, and some crazy stuff happens like in their life and in their relationship, like from the beginning. And it was cool to like read a romance that wasn't like all of these like crazy miscommunications. I feel like a lot of romances, like the big like issue and the big story and like why we're even reading it is just these crazy issues that they like make up themselves, that the big like, oh my god, what are we gonna do, isn't, oh my god, we don't know how to communicate. So I really recommend the whole series, but especially Reckless. My favorite reread of the year was In the Woods by Tana French. So it's the first book in the Dublin Murder Squad, and I read it for book club. I feel like that's a theme for a lot of these books, but whatever. So yeah, so I picked this one up for book club. I wasn't sure if I was going to give it a reread, but I hadn't read it in like probably a few years now. So I was like, honestly, it's one of my favorite books ever. I love Tana French. I'm still working on the series, so might as well just like give it a go and see if I think it's as good as I remember it being. You know what I mean? And it was. I loved it. I love Tana French. She just does a like murder mystery so well. It's always interesting. I love reading books set in Ireland. It's just like a different setting than I feel like what I'm used to, and it was just so good. So I recommend that whole series, at least as far as I've gotten. In the Woods was great, and I loved the second one, The Likeness. That one was very secret history, but like better, I think. But similar plot with the like dark academia, like murdery, like oh my god, group of friends, but like are they friends or are they just like crazily like codependent? Like same vibes, but like better in my opinion. Genre you've been loving or reading the most this year? I feel like I said at the beginning, I have read a lot of queer books this year. I don't know if it was necessarily on purpose. It's just what I've been drawn to lately, and it's been so fun. I don't know, just like different, interesting, good, loving it. And I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but I feel like this summer I've gotten into historical fiction way more than I would have ever thought. But I've gotten back into it a little bit this year, partly because of book club. And then I feel like because of my book club books, I feel like I've been a little more drawn to it. Like, I think I miss reading just a good old story, you know? I don't need to read everybody's like inner monologue of whatever. Like, I just feel like I am getting a bit more into like plot heavy books. Not that I'm even reading like crazy like fantasy plot heavy, like blah blah blah, like battles and stuff. Just like a good story, you know? Like, I don't always need to be in somebody's head reading their thoughts. And I feel like that's how I spent a lot of the last like 3 or 4 years. And it's nice to finally be kind of like, not necessarily working my way out of that because I love those books too, but like adding some other things in. But yeah, I would say queer books and historical fiction. Prompt 6, new release you haven't read yet but want to. Oh, okay. Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo. So I read Most Fun We Ever Had, I think back in college again, or like right after I graduated, but I think I was still in college, and just fell in love with the whole book. She wrote this huge just family saga. Every chapter was a different family member, and we're jumping from the past to the present, and it was just so freaking good. If I'm being honest, I don't necessarily remember everybody's like storylines, but I think it was just everybody's separate chapters and everyone being individuals, so you care about everybody, and then how's it all combined. And I remember the parents in that book being so in love, and that's kind of like the glue that kept their family together. And I love love story. I love long-lasting love where people have had to choose to keep loving each other and like be in relationships, because in my opinion, like, yes, be in love, but at some point love is a verb and love is an action and love is a choice that you have to make every day to show up and be there for someone else. And I feel like that book really showed that. So I have not read this book, but I can go ahead and read to you what I wrote about it, which is what I read about it. So this is a book about a 57-year-old woman who is now in a pretty privileged position in life, unlike her childhood. But it all gets derailed when her children start living life and involving her in the messiness of their actions or choices, whatever. I'm not exactly sure what that messiness is yet because I haven't read it. But just the fact that she's writing again about family and like older main characters, like a parent, I'm very interested in that. So yeah, I cannot wait. I think it came out in like June. So it's very, very, very new. But yeah, I hope to get to it by like the end of the year or whatever. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Of course, it's Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. It's about two grieving brothers who I think have separated a lot in life, and whatever they're grieving brings them kind of like back together. And yeah, I mean, who doesn't love Sally Rooney? I feel like everyone does. I can't wait. I love the cover. I'm excited that we're hopefully reading more about like brothers and family life instead of just like messy young relationships, like romantic relationships. I think this will be fun. That I feel like it's different relations than she like normally writes about. I feel like she loves to write about like friends and dating and friends dating each other. So yeah, no, I can't wait to just get her take on like family life. Number 8, biggest disappointment. Death Valley by Melissa Broder. I freaking hated that book, and I was so sad because I would say I'm like a Melissa Broder super fan. Like, I love So Sad Today. I loved Milk Fed. And then I read The Pisces a year or two ago. Maybe last year? 2 years ago? I don't know. And liked it. Liked it enough. It wasn't my favorite book ever, but I did like it. Interesting, you know? Like, Melissa Broder just, like, knows how to, like, make you go, what the fuck is happening? But also, like, he, ha, 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 whoa, that's so sad. And I expected the same out of Death Valley, and I just, like, couldn't give one fuck the whole time. So we're following this lady in the desert as she's like grieving her dad who hasn't even passed yet, but like he's kind of in and out of like consciousness, and she's so sad, and her husband's like chronically ill, and she is like in the desert, high as hell, in a cactus, ? Like being a sad woman. And I just like did not care. Like I love a weird story, and I love the dark humor. Like I said, it just wasn't, I don't know. I just didn't like it. And I just can't relate to like, I feel like somebody in your family, whether it's your husband or your dad or whoever, like being so sick and needing help and like leaving and just like being a crazy lady in the woods or in the desert, sorry. It just was like not for me. And I was so sad because I really thought I would love it because I mean, I love Broder. I thought I did, and I think I still do. I think she'll always be like an autobi author for me, if I had to say. But yeah, no, I was very sad by me not enjoying that book. Oh my God, the biggest surprise, Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. I was shocked that I ever picked that book up, and then I ended up loving it. I feel like I have seen that ugly ass cover so many fucking times on Goodreads that it's just so ugly that I'm breezing right by. You know what I mean? I judge books by their cover, at least when it comes to like, am I going to pick it up or not? And that one was so ugly, and it had so many reviews that I was just like, I don't even think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. And it was our book club pick for this month. And I read it, and I freaking loved it. It really, I feel like, was one of those books that I don't know, it's really got me back into wanting to read more historical fiction. So you're following this family, but basically just like the kids in the family, they get kidnapped and taken to the Tennessee Children's Home, like an orphanage. And basically this orphanage is selling children to wealthier, higher class, more privileged like people, families, whatever. They make a lot of money off of it. I don't know. It was just so freaking good. I teared up a couple times. It was just so sad and so good. I highly recommend. But like I said, I feel like literally everyone has read it. But if you've been avoiding it because of the ugly cover and all the reviews and stuff, just like I had, I wouldn't. I would go read it. Truly. Favorite new author, debut, or new to you? So for this, I have 2 written down. I wrote Rebecca Makkai after reading I Have Some Questions for You. So I had The Great Believers on my physical TBR shelf for 2 or 3 years now, I think. And I have been avoiding it because it's long, or looks long, and all I've ever heard about it was how freaking sad it is. And I was just like, you know, I don't know about this. I don't know about this right now. But after reading I Have Some Questions for You for one of my book clubs, I just like, I cannot wait to pick up Great Believers. I just like don't know when is the right time to be that sad. Like I haven't figured that part out yet. So who knows if she'll actually end up being one of my favorite authors, but like I have some questions for you. It was very interesting, and it was a very, very interesting book club book to discuss with a lot of other people. I cannot wait to keep reading things by Rebecca Makkai. So we'll see. Maybe this is just like a one-off that I liked this book, but I definitely am interested in like reading more by her in the future. The second one is Jen Beagin. I only gave Big Swiss, I want to say like a 4-star, I think, maybe. And so it's crazy to me to be like, oh my God, favorite author. I've only read one book and it wasn't even 5 stars. But I can just feel the like dark humor. Like it's really giving Broder. Very explicit and nasty and gross and silly and funny and dark in the same way. And I just can't wait to keep picking up what she writes. I need to go back and see if she has any older books that sound interesting to me. But yeah, no, I could really see myself falling in love with her writing, and just I want to keep picking up what she comes out with. Newest favorite character, I did write down The Collective We from Brutes by Diz Tate. It's just so interesting to me to read from the collective we of a young group of girls just being girls and learning how crazy and traumatic and cruel being a young girl and a young woman is in this world. So I just feel like that was like interesting to be able to read from a girl's perspective and be able to read from a collective we and still agree. Like I could have been one of those girls 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you know what I mean? And I feel like I've really enjoyed that part of it, but like I said, the book is very dark, sad, a little not fever dreamy, but very like, what is going on here? Like it's kind of hard to like sift through a little bit. But I highly recommend if you like a dark book about like girlhood in general, like so good. Book that made you cry, Before We Were Yours by Lisa Wingate. I wasn't like crying, but I definitely had a few, I teared up a few times. It was just so sad, and you just become so invested in the characters and their stories and their life that you're just like, are you so freaking for real? And then it's one of those books that you're kind of like, oh my God, like this is the worst thing that could ever happen. And then something else happens and you're like, are you kidding? And then another thing happens and you're like, you're so serious. Like you just keep thinking it like can't get any worse. And then it always does. So it's one of those. It's very sad, but did like it. Book that made you happy, Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I would say that this one made me happy in the sense that it really made me reflect on like being with my family and time I've spent, specifically getting to like hear stories from my family members, especially one of my grandmas. I used to like beg and beg and beg for her to tell me the story of like how her and my grandpa met and like fell in love over and over and over again. And it was one of those things that like I never got tired of hearing it. And I know she never got tired of telling me every single detail over and over and over again. Like, I don't know, she used to pick me up from high school a little bit. And I just feel like it was one of those stories that I would like ask about almost every, like, I don't want to say too often, because can you ask stories like that too often? But it's like, I knew the story and I would ask again. And she would tell me every single detail over and over again. And I just feel like it was one of those things that like, it really makes you like reflect on like older people in your life and like what their lives were like before you were around and before like your parents were around. It was like getting to hear my grandma when she was like a young lady was just so like fun and interesting to me, because like her whole life you're like, oh, my grandma's my grandma, you know what I mean? Like her life is me, her life is like my aunts, my uncles, my dad. And I just feel like it was like really cool to get to, I don't know, like I guess like learn about her life before she had us. And I feel like after speaking to a lot of other people my age, I feel like a lot of people don't ask the older people in their life about their older life. And I think that's really sad to me, because it's like really interesting and like it makes people really happy to get to tell the stories and like share their experiences with you. So yeah, I loved Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. Most beautiful book you've bought so far or received? I don't know if I received or bought. I think I bought the other one I read this year. I don't think I got it this year though. But Brutes by Diz Tate. I love this cover so much. Oh my God, my battery's gonna die. But yeah, I love this cover so much. So pretty. And then also the Butterfly Lampshade by Amy Bender. So we're going to skip the last two questions because my camera's going to die. Thank you all so much for watching,